switch screens. Okay. Our labor acknowledgement. So similarly, we acknowledge that this country and all of our higher education institutions would not exist if not for the exploited labor of enslaved Black people. And we honor the legacy of the African diaspora and Black life knowledge and skills that have been stolen due to anti-Black racism and directly contributed to the establishment and development of our institutions of higher learning. And we point out these two groups not exclusively, like that there are many other marginalized folks that are responsible for the creation and for us to, of our country and for us to even be here today, which also is why we would like to acknowledge veterans. And we acknowledge the dedication, courage, and sacrifice of our veterans and current service members have given to our country. We honor those who have given their lives and all those who have risked them in order for our nation to remain free. And so we do these acknowledgements to try to center ourselves in the work and really talk about like where we are in the space. And so let's make some moves. I'm like all over the place. Cool. So we wanted to start by sharing, I'm gonna hide this again. Kind of like our connection to the work as we were creating this presentation. Like Vanessa and I both have veterans in our families. And so we wanted to talk about those folks as we get started. And so here are some folks from my family. This is my grandfather on the left, 1956. And most of my family was all Navy, a good portion of them. And so this is my grandfather, my Uncle Mark, and my brother is in the third picture on the right. And they've all served in the Navy. 1956 is when my grandfather's was there, went to Korea. My brother, my Uncle Mark then, all over the place. Was on the USS Forstall out of Mayport, Florida, and served in the Mediterranean from 1977 to 1981. And then my brother on the right in the third picture, he was on the USS George Washington out of Norfolk, Virginia, and served in the Middle East after the Gulf War, 92 to 96. I also want to point out this book, The Girls of Atomic City. So two of my great aunts helped to build bombs in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, in the secret city, and took trains each day and weren't allowed to tell anyone about it. And there's a really cool book about that experience of women helping during World War II. And so let's talk about Vanessa's fam.
Hello, so this is my dad. I like to brag on my dad. He'll be 94 tomorrow. So I'm super proud of him in more ways than one. But here over on the right, that is him in South Carolina in 1950. He just kind of missed getting deployed in some of the wars that were happening around that time, and he was about 20 years old. And then my Uncle Andrew, who is not here on this plane, but he was in the Air Force. And he was stationed in Fort Worth, Texas, where he was, and I got to see the base there. So super fan of the base. They had a lot of cool stuff there. As a third grader, visiting and seeing all the people show respect to my uncle was really cool to see. So.
Great. So we'd like to get started by talking about the military's role in civil rights, overall. And so we're going to start by talking about women, and the Women's Armed Services Integration Act happened in 1948 under Harry Truman. This established that at least 2% of each branch could include women. They weren't allowed to be in command over women or men, and no direct combat. And if they were pregnant, they could be automatically discharged. And there's also many challenges for women with sexual violence within the military. But so 2013, this rule was rescinded, and that's when all women were allowed to serve in any role within the military. It came in 2013. And so we wanted to point out those things here. We've got desegregation of the military also happened. It happened a month after women were established to be allowed in the integration of the military. Desegregation of the military came in 1948 with Executive Order 9981, also under Harry Truman. And really, Black soldiers have been serving in every single war that we've had in the US. Black soldiers have been serving during the Civil War, during Revolutionary War. Some were given freedom for joining and being able to serve for their country. They were, there's others, many not given the same equal rights as other veterans during that time, but some were given freedom from slavery for fighting. Over 200,000 Black men fought for the Union Army in the Civil War. And so that in particular, folks coming from the South up to the North in order to essentially gain freedom after fighting the war. Black World War II veterans really saw what it was like living abroad and the service that they were, the things that they were able to see, like people were given the same rights in different countries. And so they were seeing this while they were fighting, and that really served as a catalyst for the civil rights movement. Coming back to the States, Black men in particular were like, why aren't we getting the same equal rights as everyone else? And so I know there was one veteran named Medgar Evers from NAACP. He was a huge activist after World War II, and then worked with Oliver Brown, who was the plaintiff in Brown versus Board of Education. 1954 is when like segregation in schools happened. So this was like really the first marker of we need to move out of Jim Crow and into the civil rights era and giving rights to everyone. This photo here, this is Edna Cummings, a retired Army colonel who championed to recognize the service and contribution of Black veterans, especially the women who served in the Army's 6,888th Central Postal Directory Battalion during World War II. And there's actually a Netflix documentary coming out about this group here in December, which is exciting. But this group in particular were in charge of the mail, and their, what was it? Not tagline or like what, I can't think of the word, but the fight was like no mail, low morale. It was like their tagline kind of thing is like everyone needs mail in order to keep fighting. Like that's how they're hearing from their people. And so the things that they were doing were very valuable. I'd say women during that time, as well as earlier, like most of the roles women were playing were more clerical roles, doing like housekeeping things that like allowed the men to then go out and fight, essentially, as well as like the obviously like huge nursing population of women. But like I was saying, 2013 became then when women are serving in any role in the military. My clunkiness today. Okay, so let me go back one. Why? Yeah, gotcha. So some other things that are important to recognize within the military and civil rights is, so gay folks in the military there were gay people in the military the entire time, as we probably understand. But so they were banned during World War II, but then not officially like written down until 1981. And that resulted in 17,000 service members being dismissed from the military. 1993, Don't Ask, Don't Tell was implemented. And so this allowed gay people to serve in the military as long as we're not openly talking about it and sharing those things. But then 2010, this order was repealed and it allowed gay people to be out in the military. The Religious Freedom Restoration Act, that came in 1993 and was re-recognized in 2020. And this was the space that was really allowing folks to practice their religion openly. And although they still have to have it like approved, that this would help in things like grooming. Like if your religious says that you need to have facial hair or your hair should be a certain way, that this allowed folks to kind of show up as their full selves as far as religion goes. And then the Transgender Military Service Act of 2021 came as an executive order, and that allowed trans people to serve in the military. Before this was an executive order by the past administration to say no, they could not. But there still is like a really rigorous process for allowing folks to transition in the military, where they have to get approval from folks that are higher up. But once that happens, then they're being supported medically, physically, like grooming standards again, where you're going to be, sleeping, using the restroom, like all those things, and the gender that they're prescribing to. So this picture here is Dr. Rachel Levine. She's the first openly transgender 4-star officer in any branch. She works with the U.S. Public Health Service Commission Corps, which are the folks that really came into play with COVID, our public health military service folks. So we're gonna switch from this to talking about some various groups and like their contributions, both during the military and afterwards.
All right, so we're going to talk about the 65th Infantry Regiment, and these were largely Puerto Ricans that were fighting for us here. And some quotes about the nope, I'm going to butcher it. So I practiced all night. But General Douglas MacArthur said the Puerto Ricans forming the ranks of the gallant 65th Infantry gave daily proof on the battlefields of Korea of their courage, determination, and resolute will to victory. Colonel William W. H. Harris said, stopping the assault forces at the water's edge provided that the Puerto Ricans could hold their own against the best trained soldiers that the United States Army could put into the field. And so they were spoken their praises. Some key challenges that this infantry had to navigate was segregation and discrimination around this time. And with looking at 1899 to 1959, we can see historically why that was. Because this infantry was largely Puerto Ricans, there were at the time some language barriers that were a challenge as well. Though the majority of them did speak English, a good chunk of them, their first language was Spanish. So trying to navigate through that and collaborate with other infantry members, that was a challenge, but it was not impossible. They also talked about the harsh weather conditions. During the Korean War, the soldiers accustomed to the Puerto Rico, tropical climate faced extreme cold and harsh winter conditions. Pardon me. Without adequate clothing, impacting their morale and combat effectiveness. So not only were there language barriers, but also adjustment to the weather conditions and trying to navigate through that. There is also tactical doctrine and high casualties with this infantry, and as well as a mass court martial. In 1952, following the loss of Outpost Kelly, 91 soldiers from the 65th Infantry were court-martialed for refusing to fight. The incident attributed to the factors like language barriers, leadership issues, and low morale damage that damaged the unit's reputation. The soldiers were later pardoned, and a report in 2001 acknowledged the bias in their prosecution. So those were some of the challenges, but the contributions that they made, they were distinguished as military service. They're also noted for breaking barriers. This regiment's service, particularly during World War II, challenged racial prejudice and discrimination within the US military. They proved their capabilities and loyalty on the field, helping to pave the way for greater integration and equality within armed forces. They're also the symbol of Puerto Rican patriotism, which definitely laid the groundwork and the foundation for Puerto Rico to be recognized in the United States today. And it's also an enduring legacy. The story of the 65th Infantry continues to inspire and resonate with people today. Their legacy is honored through the monuments, documentaries, books, and Congressional Gold Medal, ensuring that their sacrifices and contributions are remembered. And here we see in 2021, there is a kind of a documentary. And if you have access to our resource document, which we'll be sure to share with everyone, you'll have access to all of the videos so that you can watch this on your own. Kelly and I had a great time going through history. Here we see that the Puerto Rican Regiment of the United States Army were recognized with Barack Obama here. And this was documented in this film in 2021. Then we have the Tuskegee Airmen. This is probably my favorite because my dad talks about them a lot because he was 11. So this is probably one of our favorite topics. But the Tuskegee Airmen, they faced a lot of racial discrimination and segregation, considering 1941 to 1948. We can see the historical contributions to that. They also had limited opportunities and resources. Despite their qualifications, these Black pilots were often denied opportunities for combat roles and leadership positions. They experienced a shortage of jobs and were subjected to a constant flow of white officers through command positions, while qualified Black officers were left idle. The formation of the bomber units, such as the 4-7th Bombardment Group, delayed due to lack of resources and training facilities for Black airmen. We also know that the Tuskegee Airmen face prejudice and stereotypes. And so while they were actively combating and fighting for their country, they were also fighting some of the discrimination on the side as well. We also know that they have some amazing contributions. A successful combat record, the Tuskegee Airmen earned a distinguished combat record flying 1,578 combat missions, escorting bombers on 179 missions. They shot down 112 enemy aircraft in the air, destroyed 150 on the ground, and damaged 148 more. Their success in protecting bombers earned them a reputation of excellence and it challenged the prevailing racist beliefs about their capabilities. We also know that the Tuskegee Airmen were breaking barriers and paving the way for integration. And this definitely started to have those conversations, as Kelly mentioned earlier in our presentation. And they also inspired future generations to become airmen as well. So this is a clip, Dogfight Season 2, Episode 13, that talks a little bit about, we're gonna show 40 seconds of the clip, but this episode goes really in depth about the Tuskegee Airmen and kind of some of those personal anecdotes as well as some historical context. So we can play a little bit.
They were told, period. They were told they lacked the intelligence to handle a modern fighter aircraft. They were not supposed to succeed. In the face of bigotry and ignorance, the Tuskegee Airmen prevailed. With skill and bravery, this all-black fighter squadron shattered racist stereotypes. Stop on legend.
Check that out.
And then we also have a film, Red Tails, that came out in 2012. It was directed by Anthony Hemingway, and it starred Cuba Gooding Jr., Terrence Howard, Bryan Cranston, Brandon T. Jackson, and Nate Parker. And this was based on the Tuskegee Airmen specifically. And this was actually a Lucasfilm production. So the same guy that did Star Wars also did this movie as well.
You want to see the trailer?
Let's go for it.
Bombs at themselves.
You stated very clear that we would never finally pass a pilots exam, make it through flight school, survive basic combat. A single area. It's damn hard to shoot down the enemy 100 miles behind the front lines.
What we do, how well we do it, does it matter?
You know what?
You'd sign up and that'd be the end of 100 years of bigotry. You should have a son, fighter pilots.
We have a right to fight for our country, the same as every other American. We will not go away.
I can't afford to have a loss if my bombs would suffer. Can you help save lives?
You get us new planes. We did it, you did it. In there. Farmers, we get to their homes. In terms of their wives. By the fathers, we get back to their children.
Awesome. So, that being said, another group that we wanted to highlight are the Navajo Code Talkers. Have folks heard about this group before? So some of the challenges, they too face prejudice and discrimination and kind of some rejection of Indigenous culture. So a lot of Indigenous folks were asked to, cut their hair, change their name to more English sounding names, things like that in order to fit in and be integrated into the service. But really the reason that the code talkers came to be is they were using Navajo language to create military codes that then could not be cracked by the enemy. Not only that, but it was a huge advantage. They were able to translate 3 lines of English within 20 seconds versus traditional code that took about 30 minutes to get through. And so multiple times throughout World War II, especially in Japan, they were ahead of the game. They really gave an advantage to our troops in order to win those battles by using these Navajo codes. And this video here is Peter McDonald. He's a veteran from Arizona in uniform here. And this little video clip we're gonna play, he talks about how they came up with the code and what that looks like.
North side of the walking on, just north of the airport. To tear everything down. Come up there, run it up. Writes a message and gives it to the Navajo code talk, covering the front line. He sends it to the commanding post. Here's what he said. The best non-achieved feat that is high, de nas onse country fortune, king that sa, as kan na kid shot. Well, if the now this that's what you're saying now. Here's what he said now. The best non-achieved feat means sheep, eyes, nose, ear, that is high, destroyer, dead nas also, tea, mouse, honey, clutching, turkey, onion, cake outside, sick force, calm as calm night, kid, shut. 3, 6, 2, fair. Does that sound like asking for help? So even the Navajo out here listening could not understand except this guy talking about sheep, I know deer, sick horse, turkey, onion, all that stuff. But the code talker down at the commanding post by the beach to whom the message was sent writes down immediately as he hears it. Send ammunition king to build 362B. Immediately, flamethrower tanks and demolition crew went out to save this company Marines of the thing. So that's how the Navajo small center, how it was used to save thousands of lives and also to help pinpoint where the enemy is. And it's an amazing story. And every one of these code fathers that are still alive and both
I think it's funny that the closed captioning trying to translate what he's saying, the Navajo words, but they essentially had to remember everything. They had hundreds of words that were code words for other things. So it sounded like gibberish or something no one other than them understood. But they had assigned all these names and kept them in their memory. Nothing was written down. Yeah. They were speaking their actual language, but the language, like he was saying, words like sheep and turkey and dog, though they used the language, like Navajo words for those words, but they assign those words to other meanings, like English meanings. And so they're saying, yeah, 3, 2, 1, bad sheep or whatever, that meant something to them that no one else understood, which is really interesting. All right. So another group that we wanted to highlight here is our Jewish American veterans. And obviously, again, all of these folks have served in every single war, whether or not we've recognized them fully or you understood that they've served in all of our wars, but they have. And they faced a lot of prejudice and discrimination, especially during World War II. I wanted to highlight these, the H on the dog tag. So like a good portion of folks when they were going into combat would put something on their dog tag in order for folks to know what their religious was for like burial purposes, ceremonial. And so like Christians had C's on theirs and the H stood for Hebrew for Jewish folks. And so some folks even decided not to put the H on there because if they were captured during World War II, like they could be themselves tortured or put into concentration camps and things like that. And so some folks chose not to have the H on their dog tags, but others did so that they could make sure that they were being properly handled after their passing. I think it's important to note that obviously like a lot of scientific research also was done during these wars by Jewish American veterans and people like Albert Einstein who came and helped create the bomb. This is Brigadier General Sidney Shakow, who was a Holocaust survivor and a veteran of over 40 years. They survived and escaped a concentration camp and then came to the United States and ended up serving in a special forces unit during Vietnam. And so there was a lot of stories when I was doing this research about folks who had escaped Nazi persecution and either joined immediately the fight against Nazis or joined the military after to fight for the US.
And so we're going to talk about the 442nd Regimental Combat Team. And this combat team was largely comprised of Japanese Americans. Some key challenges that this combat team faced was racial prejudice and discrimination, difficult combat conditions, and internal conflicts and leadership issues. I'm just trying to figure out how to navigate. Some things and some quotes about this combat team. General George C. Marshall said they were superb, exclamation point. The word correctly describes it, superb. They took terrific casualties. They showed rare courage and tremendous fighting spirit. Everybody wanted them. General Mark W. Clark said, I had the honor to command the men of the 442nd Combat Team. You fought magnificently in the battle and wrote brilliant chapters in the military history of our country. Some military contributions of this combat team is quite a bit. I'm going to do my best to summarize. So the military accomplishment, this was the most decorated unit for its size and length of service in U.S. military history. They earned 8 presidential unit citations, 5 of which were awarded for actions within the single month. The 21 members of the unit received the Medal of Honor, the nation's highest military decoration. They did the rescue of the last battalion. They're best known for their historic rescue of the 1st Battalion, 141st Infantry Regiment in France, October 1944. This rescue, which took place under extreme difficult conditions, cemented the unit's reputation for bravery and sacrifice. They also had an impact on civil rights and also an enduring legacy. This combat team continues to be celebrated for its courage and its contributions to the fight for freedom and equality. The unit's motto, Go for Broke, has become a symbol of their determination and willingness to risk everything for their country. Their story has been told in films, books, documentaries, and even Broadway. And then here is the National World War II Museum also has a documentary that was done a year ago that talks about the courageous acts and a little bit more about the team.
In January 1943, the U.S. War Department faced a big question. Would Japanese American men be willing to fight for a country that put 120,000 people of Japanese descent behind barbed wire? This is the story of the all-Nisei 442nd Regimental Combat, and this is World War II in two. Spending internships with the National World War II Museum in New York. Nearly a year after President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed Executive Order 966 that led to Japanese Americans on the West Coast being put into incarceration camps, the government had a change of heart. Thanks to lobbying by the Japanese American Citizens Group, the War Department decided that second-generation Japanese Americans, known as Nisei, should be allowed to serve in the military. Why the change? The discipline and dedication from another group of Nisei soldiers, the 100th Infantry Battalion from Hawaii, had convinced military leaders that Japanese American men could be assets on the front lines. Despite pushback from the Army, FDR announced the formation of the 442nd Regimental Combat Team, which was activated on February 1st, 1943. To join the unit, Nisei men in the incarceration camps had to fill out a questionnaire to prove their loyalty to the United States, and around 1,500 Nisei from the camp signed up. In April of 1943, 2,600 Nisei from Hawaii joined 800 men from the incarceration camps and traveled to Camp Shelby in Mississippi to undergo basic training. The group would later ship out to Italy in May of 1943 to augment the 100th Infantry Battalion. The 442nd's most famous mission was the courageous rescue of the 141st Texas Regiment, the Lost Battalion, in October 1944. Deep in the French Vosges Mountains, 270 men of the Lost Battalion were surrounded by German forces. Members of the 442nd had endured battle against Germans for over a week and liberated 2 French towns in the process when they were ordered to rescue the trapped Texas people. After another 6 days of brutal combat, the 442nd finally broke through German lines and rescued the Lost Battalion. The cost of the Vosges campaign was high. The 442nd lost 160 men and more than 1,200 wounded. But their bravery did not go unnoticed. The 442nd became the most decorated unit of its size in American military history. And men, including future Senator Daniel Inouye, received the Medal of Honor for their courageous actions in Europe, embodying the team's go for broke spirit.
So now we're going to talk about individuals, and one of those individuals was Harvey Milk. His military service was 1951 to 1955, when he was forced to resign due to his sexual orientation. But his political service was 1973 to 1978. Harvey Milk definitely faced some heavy challenges, including societal homophobia, political opposition while he was running for office, and internal conflicts within the gay community, as he was an advocate and the first elected official that identified as gay. Through his military contribution, he served in the U.S. Navy, and again noted he was forced to resign due to sexual orientation. However, in 2016, the U.S. Navy announced they would name a ship after Milk, the USNS Harvey Milk, in his honor. This was praised by many, while some critics argued that he would not have wanted to do this due to the opposition of the Vietnam War. His contributions outside of his military service, his activism and community organizing. He was known as the mayor of Castro Street due to his activism and work in the growing gay community. He organized boycotts, rallied in support for LGBTQ plus rights, and created a sense of community empowerment among gay people. Electoral success and political representation was also noted for him, as his persistence led to his election of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors in 1977. He became the first openly gay elected official in the United States, and his victory inspired hope in the LGBTQ plus community during a time of widespread hostility and discrimination. He also championed legislative advocacy and policy change, a coalition of building and intersectionality. He was recognized for the interconnectedness of various social justice movements. He advocated for the rights of diverse groups, including men, women, racial and ethnic minorities, and the disabled. He forged alliances with labor unions and other organizations to advance shared goals of equality and inclusion. He is known for his hope speech and enduring legacy, and he has continued to be recognized and honored. In 2008, Sean Penn, who won an Oscar for his portrayal of Harvey Milk. This movie came out in 2008 with Sean Penn, Emily Hirsch, Josh Brolin, Diego Luna, and James Franco.
I'm gonna skip this trailer just for sake of time, but like we said before, we'll be sending a list of like all the resources to folks afterwards. So like all of these videos and where we found everything is all linked for you to be able to jump back in and check out later. So we also want to talk about the Hmong and Lao veterans. So if you're not familiar, Hmong folks are a group of Asian people that are like their own culture, but that don't necessarily have a home country. So they were in multiple countries in the region. And during Vietnam, we hired essentially Hmong soldiers and folks from Laos to help us in kind of a secret war that was happening in order to help contain the spread of communism to other Southeast Asian countries. And so some of their key challenges are that there still is no official recognition of Hmong veterans as veterans, and they don't receive services from the United States as veterans. In 2000, they created like the Naturalization Act, and Hmong veterans and Lao refugees have like a path to citizenship, but there still isn't any veteran services that they're receiving. I have a friend who's Hmong, and that was my like first connection to this group and learning more about this. There's a huge population in Minnesota as well. So like this photo is 7 Hmong veterans who they were trying to create a holiday to recognize, the Hmong veterans in Minnesota, honoring their service. And so this group is still kind of fighting for that recognition, but did play a large role and our success there and during Vietnam. We also wanted to highlight Muslim American soldiers. And so this group of soldiers, like, again, has served in every major US war. We've always had Muslim veterans, but in particular after 9/11, they've really faced a lot of discrimination and prejudice, especially with religious freedom and lack of trust within the service. And their main contributions really have been around Middle Eastern conflicts. And so many have served as translators and folks who are like teaching others about the culture and what to expect, which has been important in understanding different Arab communities and how we can best serve in those spaces. This is Humuyun. I'm pronouncing his name wrong, but Mr. Khan here, who received a Purple Heart and a bronze medal in 2004 when he passed away. He was defusing a bomb when it detonated and saved many members of his crew. I'm like, look at the name. Unit. There you go. Thanks, Mom. But so Khan is buried in Arlington Cemetery, and you may remember Obama brought his family to recognize him during his time in office to give that Purple Heart and bronze medal. This man here, his name is Mansoor Shams, and he runs a website called the Muslim Marine, which is a really cool space for folks that are Muslim to find some community within the service. And so I do want to play this video real quick to learn a little bit more about him.
The many of those who have born you represents more than a title. This being a Marine is an identity. But they want to bring all the Marines. Mansoor Shams came to the United States from Pakistan when he was 6. At 18, he chose to serve his country. That's the story that we found. A bit later, I decided that for the best, I would do the proud to bring. About a year into his service, September 11th, 2001. You heard about the first taking the tower and And just like most Americans, there was a lot of confusion regarding what's like, our base essentially went on the election. Now, 20 years later, we reflect on how the day changed many of the ways we approach life. This U.S. Marine will tell you, it changed how others approached him. It was a big unexpected because we have things in the military that we all really agree. In the beginning, I sort of just laughed it off when I got calls from like her, Ben Laden, and Taliban. But after some time, started out to put it right here. I don't think that the entire Marine Corps or the U.S. military is much of a but the racism and bigotry, hatred, homophobia, do exist in relation to those. And that shows clearly for me, as a Marine who served prior to 9/11, when 9/11 took place and after 9/11. Even though Muslim Americans are among the close to 3,000 people killed on 9/11, and at Arlington National Cemetery, tombstones mark where many have given their lives for this country. Assaults against Muslims rose in the years after 9/11, increasing by more than 7 times in 2001 alone. 19 individuals, so-called Muslims, that have, essentially, affected the entire state of 1.8 billion plus people around the world, which is so crazy. It's so unjust. In the face of hate, let's work trying to educate those who serve. I helped some Marines I was able to remove the phobia out of many others. So I have my Day as a civilian. He continues the work as the founder of Muslim Marine. Resources for people who just want to learn and have questions. When with a very genuine sort of aspect of myself to just come before fellow Americans and say, hey, let's have a conversation, let's talk things out. What's on your mind? And while he's had moments of optimism, he says the reality, now 2 decades after 9/11, that inequality is still very much part of the Muslim experience in America. Every year when I run somewhere, which is that hashtag of never forget such kindness. And again, just in these small micro-investments America has to think about. There's a segment of the American population, of the American public, that looks at never forget as it will go to again. People who look like you, never forget that. Never forget those moments. These are things that are reality that are taking place. And if never forget is meant to say, hey, don't forget someone that looks like you, then obviously it's a different point, right? Mansour says he might have stayed in the Marine for long had he not faced the kind of harassment he did after the attacks in 2001. But his service continued by helping fellow Americans better understand millions of people who are Muslim all this country. I get to show America as an heritage. Something that most of us are serving. They show Washington, that most of us have died serving the team. That was supposed to do serve until this very day. It's very not just as someone as a service member, but as positions in the years as teachers in various professions to make America a better place for everyone.
So yeah, definitely check out his website. It's really cool if you are interested in learning more. So. All right.
And we have Eric Fanning. And Eric Fanning has a quote that says, "The more the Army looks like society and the more voices we can bring in, the stronger that we're going to be." And here are some of his, I want to focus on his military contributions because they are super amazing. He is the first openly gay service secretary. And he focused on inclusivity and diversity among all different identities, not just the ones that he identified with. In that focus of inclusion and diversity, he championed efforts to make the Army more inclusive. Under his leadership, the Army expanded opportunities for women and transgender soldiers in combat roles. He also implemented grooming and dress waivers for religious reasons, allowing Muslims to serve while adhering to their faith. So a lot of the contributions that Kelly mentioned earlier, Eric Fanning was definitely at the head of those conversations. In terms of his contributions, he is the president and CEO of the Aerospace Industries Association. In his current role, Fanning advocates for the aerospace and defense industry, working with member companies to support policies that promote innovation, economic growth, and national security. He also has an advocacy for LGBTQ rights. As a vocal advocate during his career, he served on the board of the LGBTQ plus Victory Fund and expressed his support for codifying protections against discrimination based on sexual orientation in the military. And lastly, his bipartisan and nonpartisan board appointments. Fanning has served on various boards and commissions, demonstrating his commitment to public service beyond his government roles. These appointments include the NASA Advisory Council, National Space Council Users Advisory Group, and the United States Air Force Academy of Board of Directors, or Visitors, sorry. And here, he is talking with, in the Library of Congress. This is a long clip, so we won't necessarily watch this today, but I definitely encourage you all to watch this. This happened in 2017, where he discussed the future of the US Army.
So we wanted to just close with this quote from Army General Mark A. Milley, where he says, "Equality and opportunity are matters of military readiness, not just political correctness. Divisiveness leads to defeat." And I picked this quote because I think that, as diverse as our nation is, so is our military. And they have taken great strides in trying to squash a lot of that marginalization and make sure that folks feel comfortable and rely on each other. And that's really how we've been able to succeed many times. And so we wanted to say thank you for being here, and thanks for hearing about all these different folks from outside the margins that maybe haven't always been as visible, their service. And we'll definitely be sharing those resources like we mentioned, so folks can dig a little bit deeper in there. And two, we would like to know if anyone in the space is a veteran graduate student to please reach out. We are looking to do some focus group work and just get a sense of what the needs are of this group and how we can better help you as the Rackham Graduate School. So please reach out if you have questions, and thank you and have a great day.